Check out the scale separation on this big girl. This is a clear sign of an ovulation. Hey guys, hope you're doing well. Here's some footage of my drive to a reptile facility, which I mentioned in my last video. It didn't go too well, but I think it's fun to watch while I explain to you what had happened here while I was away. So I had somebody watch over and take care of my snakes while I was away. He's not versed in ball pythons, but he is dependable and reliable. So I had left this person with a lot of instructions, but I'll just point two of them out for this video. First is to mark down the dates of every shed. The reason for that is because I knew there was one or two girls that were due to ovulate while I was away, and so if you mark down the shed, then I could work backwards and know when they ovulated, and also to work forward to know when to expect eggs. The other instruction that I left is that they need fresh, clean water every day, and also to change out the substrate whenever it gets dirty. Now, regarding the substrate, I guess I had emphasized cleanliness and hygiene a little bit too heavily, and so this person basically changed out the substrate a little bit too often. So regardless if it was a big pile of solid waste or just a few drops of urine, he would change out the substrate. Now you would think that's a good thing and a safe thing. However, with the 28 quart tubs that hold all the larger girls, I have to prep the substrate, and the way I prep it is with 2 sheets of newspaper and 1 sheet of unprinted newspaper on top. So I had prepped about 52 sets of substrate. And I calculate that since I change out the substrate once a week, and when it gets dirty, thinking that I'll be away for 2 weeks, he'll go through, on average 2 to 3 sets of substrate per tub. And I only have a little bit over a dozen mature females. Well, it turns out he cleaned out the tubs way too often, and he went through this 52 sets of substrate within the first 8 days. So there was almost another week left where he had no substrate and didn't think to call me and ask me where to get more. So when I got home, there were a few tubs that were extremely messy. Other ones were spotless, but there were a few that are messy. So keep that in mind when I show you a couple girls that have ovulated. These are the ones with pretty much urine-filled substrate, but trust me, I cleaned them out right after the ovulation was over. Okay, so with that said, let's take a look at a few of the girls. And I'm going to work backwards from the one that's furthest away from laying the eggs up until the one that's closest to laying eggs. This one is the pastel clown. Now you can see she is pretty swollen. I actually thought that she might be giving me slugs at first, just because the ovulation seems so small, but then after a couple days it got pretty big, and this view here made me feel a little bit more confident that she's gonna produce a nice clutch. Now she's been off feed for a while and she hasn't produced solid waste in a while, but she still needs to drink water, which accounts for all the urine stains and the fact that, my buddy ran out of substrate. So don't be alarmed. Like I said, I am going to change this out right after the ovulation is over. Now you can see how big she is. She is well over 2,000 grams, but even so, last year she produced all slugs. And I think this year I'll see some improvements. Next up is the pastel het clown. She's also over 2,000 grams, and she is just a couple days ahead of the pastel clown. I can tell because she was in full ovulation the night I got home. You can see how swollen she is. It's very, very similar to the pastel clown. Basically started to swell midsection. Oh, I forgot to tell you what they're bred to. So the pastel clown that you saw earlier, she was bred to a coral glow het clown, and this one, the pastel het clown girl here was bred to a clown spider. So I want to delay showing you a couple of the other girls just so I can talk a little bit and show you a little bit around genetics. So I think it's important to understand genetics even at the most basic level if you're going to attempt breeding. If you're not interested in this or you already know about genetics, I'll put a time in the description below and you can just skip forward. So I'm going to use, in my example, the last pairing, which was the female pastel het clown paired up to the clown spider male. And in that breeding, my goal is the bumblebee clown or clown bee, which is clown, spider, and pastel. Now, a lot of times when I'm breeding, all I want to know is if I'm going to hit a certain morph and what my chances are, statistically speaking, what my chances are of hitting that morph. So there's an easy way to calculate that. You can go to my past videos where I use the Punnett square and I draw this huge square out and calculate all the possibilities, but in most cases I just want to know if I'm going to hit a certain combo. So this is what I do. We'll start with the female. She is a pastel and she's het for clown. That means she's only got one clown gene. I'm going to make this into a grid. This is the female up here. So genes come in pairs. She's only got one pastel gene. If she's a super pastel, then I would have pastel down here, but she's not. So we'll just put, this is a horrible eraser, we'll just put NA, and then she's het for clown, so that means she's only got one clown gene. If she's a visual clown, she would have two clown genes, but she's het, so again we'll put NA. So that's it for the female. She pretty much only has two mutations. This is a codominant, this is a recessive. Now on to the male. He is a spider, and again, genes have to come in pairs. He's not a super spider, he's not a spider blackhead, that's allelic. He's not those, so again, NA. And he is clown, visual clown, so that means he's got two copies of the clown gene. That's why I write it like that. Alright, so my goal is to hit, like I said, the clown bee, which is, in order to be a clown, you have to have two copies of the clown gene. I'm just going to abbreviate. One copy of the pastel gene and one copy of the spider gene. And the order doesn't really matter. So I see here I need pastel. So I'm going to write a 2. And I'll tell you why I'm using 2s in a second. I also need a spider. So the male has a spider. I'm going to put a 2 here. And I need a copy from the female. So the female has a copy here. I'm going to put a 2 there. And then as for the male, because he's a visual, it doesn't really matter which one. He's always going to pass down 1, so I don't really need to calculate it. In this case, I'm just going to put a 1 and a 1. Or an X and an X, however you want it. But these I always put 2s. And the reason I do that is genes are calculated in powers of 2. What I mean is when you're calculating the statistics of the offsprings or the mutations or the combos, it's always going to be, 50%, 25%, and so on. So like that. So these are actually in powers of 2s because 2 is 2 to the 1, 4 is 2 to the 2, 8 is 2 to the 3, and 16 is 2 to the 4. And if you do this more often, you'll just kind of memorize what these numbers are. So 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, 256, 5, 12, 10, 24, 20, 48. And then you can just make them all into fractions. So it's always going to be 1 over whatever that power of 2 is. Obviously, if you get to like 128, and that's your odds of hitting a certain morph, you might not want to try that breeding. That's why I said genetics is the basics of genetics is going to be important to understand if you're going to breed, because you don't want to put 2 male and female and spend all that time and energy and resources and to know that your odds are like 1 in 128 or 1 in 2048, so it might not be worth it. Anyway, so that's why I use 2s, because everything's going to be power of 2s. And in order for me to hit my clown pastel spider, you just have to bring down the 2s. So it's going to be 1 over, because it's always a 1 in the numerator, you're going to be 1 over in the number of 2s, 2 to the 3, which gives you 1 over, that's the odds of hitting this combination. So I have 1 in 8 chance of hitting that combination, and that's statistically speaking. Obviously this is not a prediction, this is just statistics. This is just telling you the possibility of hitting this combination with this pairing. So 1 out of 8 isn't too bad. You should probably expect between maybe 4 and 10 eggs depending on the female. Well, at least that's what I'm expecting, because I know my females. I know some of them are new, some of them have bred for a few seasons. So I could, with this female, because she's over 2,000 grams, she could lay 8 eggs, and out of 8, I could hit 1. So this odds is good for me. So I'm taking a chance, putting this pair together and hoping to hit this combo. Now, the other thing you can calculate here is, let's say you don't even care about any other genes. You could say in your mind, I'll be happy with just a clown, right? It could be normal clown, it could be pastel clown, it could be spider clown, it could be the bumblebee clown, but you don't care. You don't care as long as you get something that's a clown, you're happy with it. So let's see how we can calculate the odds of that. So you don't care about this. You do need a clown gene from the female, so we'll put a 2 here. And you don't care if it's spider. Just put the X there for consistency. And you will need 1 copy of the clown gene from the male. But it doesn't really matter which one, because he's always going to pass down at least 1, so that's guaranteed. Again, I'm just going to put 1s there. So clown, visual clown require 2 copies of the clown gene because it's recessive, and you don't care if there's any other genes attached to it, if it's a normal clown or whatever other genes. You just want to make sure that you have 2 clown copies, and that's what we have here. You have 1 clown copy here, and here it's guaranteed, so you don't have to calculate that. So again, we just bring down the 2s. So 1 in the numerator, and then we bring down the 2. So the chances of you hitting a clown or a clown combo is 1 out of 2. That means, statistically speaking, if 8 eggs were produced, you have a good chance of 4 of them being clowns. So this concept, or this method, is actually very easy to execute, but it might take a little bit of practice. And what I'm going to do in my future videos is try to incorporate this method more often. So anytime I do egg cuttings or breedings, I'll try to incorporate this method so you guys can see many different examples.
Well, I hope I didn't bore anyone with the genetics calculation, but let's move on to looking at some of the other girls. I had suspected that this pie girl would ovulate while I was away. Unfortunately, I didn't know when that would happen, and when I came back, it was still not apparent if or when she had ovulated. However, about 3 days after I came back, and by the way, as you can see, I changed out the substrate and provided clean water. 3 days afterwards, she had shed, and I'm guessing it was her prelay shed. I'm basing this guess on 2 things. Number 1, her color is lighter. Now, it could be because they shed. Usually when they shed, they're brighter.
but in this case, you've heard of the glow before they go. Well, I think hormone plays a part in their color, so that might be making her brighter than usual. Now I have another pie that we can use for comparison. Putting the non-gravid pied next to what I think is the gravid pied. Hopefully the camera will pick it up. It's actually more apparent in person, but I think the camera can still pick up the subtle difference between the colors. The potential gravid one does seem to be brighter than the other one. Color alone is probably not a good indication of whether or not it is a prelay shed or if the girl is gravid, but the other characteristic that I see is the shape of her body. So she's a little bit more triangular. You can see the dorsal protruding just a little bit, and I have seen a little bit of concaving along the side, along the belly. So that to me indicates that she has eggs. This is going to be the last female that I'm going to show in this video. She is an exanthic Hetterpied, and according to my calculations, I also expected her to ovulate while I was away on vacation. Luckily, the person I had taken care of my snakes marked down her last shed, which happened to be the day I returned. So if I work backwards from that date, it means she had ovulated about 4 days after I departed. So it's really important to keep good, clean, and accurate records of all the animals. So in case where you're not available or you're not around for 2, 3, 4 weeks, you can use your old records and any new data that are collected and deduce what had occurred during the time you were away. But that's all for now. If you want to see the progress on these girls, make sure you're subscribed and ring that notification bell. And oh, by the way, the pastel het clown girl's tub is clean. That's just water you see there. The pastel clown girl, she's still going through ovulation. I also want to let you know that an egg cutting video is just weeks away. I'm gonna have to try to convince myself to let a few of these go because I can't keep them all. And there's a pretty good chance I'm gonna hold another giveaway. Give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.